welcome to the Car King Sports and Variety Show. I am your host, the Catman, Brian Cataquet, a.k.a. the Card King. We are live on ABC's KMET 1490 AM.com, your number one spot right here for news and talk on the West Coast. I thank everyone for tuning in this morning. On the telephone line, I welcome back to the program a legendary rock guitarist. He played with Dio, he played with Rough Cut, and so many others. We welcome back to the show, Craig Goldy. Craig, thanks so much for your time again.
Oh, hey, brother. Thanks for having me back. It was such a great time last time. It was just like, yeah, that's cool. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. And, you know, Craig, one of the things that's striking to me, early on in your life and it's an inspiring part of your life and your existence, that before you became Craig Goldy, the rock star, you were living on the streets in San Diego. Is that right?
You are correct. Yeah, to avoid the abusive family that I grew up with.
Like I said, it's such an inspiring story because, you were living in your car, you landed on your feet, which has to be one of the biggest breaks ever, getting to perform, with Dio and your appearance on that Dream Evil album. So, like, living in your car, I mean, did you have your guitar in your car? Were you, rehearsing, practicing during those days?
Yeah, the funny thing is that's all I had. My girlfriend's laughing because she's heard this story so many times. That's all I had was a guitar. And the injuries were atrocities, where I would actually land in the hospital and have to have stitches and surgeries with more stitches. And it was intense, really brutal. So living on the streets was actually, welcome, but it came with some odd, there was some odd people and odd things as you live on the streets, and especially sometimes you get in a band and you'd be hanging out with one of your friends and their wives. You could tell the wife was like, okay, I'm going up to bed now, dear, as if to say, get rid of him, and I'm looking at that couch like an Ethiopian would look at a pizza. He's all, here's my best friend, brother, band member go, well, I hope you find a safe street tonight. I'm like, oh man, but it was interesting because my girlfriend pointed out to me a long time ago, I agree, it's like I had nothing to lose. I think I told her that last time. And I was so determined to say, hey, I can do this. I'm not fooling myself. I can do this. To the people who were saying, it was wonderful when usually when parents say, if you don't like it, there's the door. Well, everybody doesn't go out the door. Well, I did.
Right.
And they're like, no, come back. I'm like, no, you said, so that was kind of cool. And I had 2 bottles of water. I think I told you this before to, wet my hair and shampoo it, rinse it, enough left over for a little bowl on the side view mirror to shave and then a wind-up clock, to wake me up in time to get to work, and had clothes in the trunk. So some days, that's what all it would be, is just getting up and going to work and then coming back and playing guitar in the car at night, or, on the weekends going to a specific park or place where I knew I was safe to just sit and play guitar. And that's what was the cool thing when Ronnie James Dio got that demo tape. They, once everything had occurred, you start hearing about what happened as it led up to that point. So I hear that they were saying, we got to get this kid up here, but how do you find a kid who lives in his car and all he has is a guitar? So they were renting me gear. They rented me amplifiers and cords and all sorts of stuff. And they found me. They could have easily given up on me because they had plenty of guitar players in L.A. to take Jake's place, who had all the equipment, all the look. They had the following from their previous bands. They could have slipped in nicely, but there was something about that tape that Ronnie told me about. There's just something about it. We got to get this kid up here, and they found me, and it is a great story, because if someone had swooped in and saved the day, I wouldn't have that almost like Rocky Balboa kind of thing where you total adversity to total triumph. Not just headlining the sports arena, but headlining the sports arena with my favorite singer, Ronnie James Dio, and then touring with Richie Blackmore, Deep Purple, my favorite band, and meeting him one-on-one, getting to hang out with the guys in Scorpions and Iron Maiden and Motorhead, Joe Lynn Turner, David Lee Roth, Eddie Van Halen, I mean, all these, the producer of Pink Floyd, the engineer and producers of Led Zeppelin, Queen, Bad Company, all these people, it's just like, it was a mind blower. And I say that not to say, gee, everybody, look what I did. To me, I'm boasting on, when you put God in the mix, we said this last time, that's when stuff really starts to happen, you know, because I had nothing.
No, absolutely. And it was because of that demo tape that you did back in the early 80s that got in the hands of a Rough Cut member, right? And then it sparked Ronnie's interest. Yes,
which made him want to come down to the auditions because he didn't want to be bothered. He just said, pick somebody. And then when he heard my tape, he called Perry McCarty from Warrior. He was the guy. Me and Perry were in a band together in San Diego. Perry left to go up and join a band called Warrior, and they had one of the biggest hits actually on KLOS at the time called, Fighting for the Earth. And he felt bad about leaving me behind. I didn't really see it that way. I mean, he'd go, man. And so he said, give me some of your demo tapes. I'll pass them around. And Warrior was friends with Rough Cut. And that, that's how that, made the, connecting the dots.
So Greg, Ronnie recruited you, hired you initially for Rough Cut, and then he promised you, I don't know if this is true, he promised you that if Viv Campbell leaves, you'll take over.
Yes, it was. That's why there was absolutely no auditions. There was a late night session. There was a few things that occurred that brought him to that statement, and it was very interesting. But there was one late night session, and he would just, it was almost like a father and a son where, like when you sit down on the floor and you cross your legs, I was sitting on the floor, crossing my legs with my guitar right beneath his feet, sitting in the chair at the studio, and he's singing these melodies for me to play. And he, can you do this, or can you do it like that? I go, you mean like this? It was just so cool. And then we just really enjoyed each other. One of these days I've got a clip about the Matchka album where Ronnie just says we enjoyed being together. We loved being together. We loved writing. We were always on the same page, and I couldn't have done this album without Greg Goldy. He's the man. And we developed that relationship from day one just because I was such a true, honest fan and I understood him. And we all know how far that goes when you meet someone who understands you, who breaks your code. It runs deeper than many other friendships. It runs deeper, especially if it's true. And that particular flow of understanding is there each and every day. It's not just a fluke. So that's why he turned to me. He stopped the tape almost like he was mad. He goes, Goldie, if Vivian ever doesn't work out, you're going to be my first choice. And then he slammed the tape on again, and I was ready to play. And that was it.
Man, so Campbell ends up leaving Dio. Goldy takes over as lead guitarist. What was the feeling amongst the other band members in the group? Were they for it? Were they against it?
Well, at the time, I'm absolutely positive they weren't fully on board. But they knew how I played because Rough Cut toured with the Holy Diver release. And so there were, funny enough, is that the drummer of Rough Cut was stealing a bunch of Vinny Appice's drum fills. And Vinny would keep telling him, stop playing my fills. Those are my fills. I should be able to be the one to play them first. And, Dave's all, no, I'm doing it. So I'm not stealing. So what they do is they filmed it so they could prove to him that, look, they're identical. Stop. At that time, that's when I was doing my one-handed thing, was in Rough Cut. And when came time for Last in Line, I get invited to the concert, and there's Vivian copying my one-handed thing. And I asked Ron, I go, could you please ask him to stop that? I mean, that's mine. I want to, I want to be able to introduce that on my own. And he looked at me as the very first time he's ever done that. He goes, Goldie, leave it alone. He goes, just take it as a compliment. Because it was so good for his band that he just, it was wild. So there was a lot of understanding that this kid, Ronnie, digs. And there's even some of the songs that they did on Holy Diver and Last in Line kind of were very reminiscent of some of the stuff that he and I wrote for Rough Cut. and
Man,
he
so
expanded
that must
on.
have pissed you off, though, Goldie. That must have pissed you off when you see, Campbell doing that, stealing your moves.
Well, it was especially because at that time, Eddie Van Halen had pretty much figured out everything a guitar player could do. What there was nothing left. That was the only thing I had that was my own. Besides that, the sound effects that I could do without having pedals. It sounded like one sounded like an ice cream truck or an icicle. So weird. The other one was like a video game, and then the two-handed thing like Stanley Jordan. I never did actually play like Eddie Van Halen. I didn't do the eruption move, but I did play other ways, like on a piano. Had the singer of Jafrius sit on his knees and hold the guitar like a table. I would play the guitar like a piano. I tried everything I could do to be different. So when he did that, I was very angry because it was, he just didn't care. Nobody seemed to care. And then Vivian tried to claim it was a Jimi Hendrix thing. And, yeah, right. But he got his in the end in a way, because we were in London. We had everybody who was anybody was in London for this press thing for the We're Stars. And so I go outside and I'm talking with George Lynch, and Vivian comes over and he goes, "So you're playing all my licks, huh?" Before I could even get a word out, George goes, "Oh yeah, I bet that's really tough, huh, Goldie?" Gee. Yeah,
Jeez.
That's really hard, huh?
Oh, my God.
And then Vivian you could see his hands kind of like crumble and go up into his elbows, and he turns around and walks away.
Wow,
no,
I'm guessing...
I love the guy.
I
love everybody, and I don't got anything about him now. I was just pissed then.
I wanted to ask you, so, I'm guessing that you and Vivian in the beginning didn't get along, but I mean, you guys still have a grudge against each other, or that's past?
No, I mean, I never really had, we got along. He could tell that I didn't like him being in the band because I preferred the Blackmore style, and so what? I mean, he was a nice guy. Otherwise, Vinny wouldn't have invited me and my girlfriend to his birthday party when Vivian was there at the same time. He was very cordial, very nice, very, very polite, And it was just what he did and said about Ronnie during that whole time of the feud that he's never taken back since. It's even Oxford University has a study that if one person was wrong for everything, eventually there's too many numbers for it to totally be just one person. It has to be the other person at some point, meaning that it wasn't just Ronnie that Vivian had a problem with. Vivian, it was a gig. It was a ladder. It was a stepping stone. It was a gig. It wasn't something that he decided that this is going to be his life like Ronnie did. Ronnie settled in. This is my life from here on out. And Vinny was his best friend in Black Sabbath, and Jimmy was his best friend in Rainbow. They were settled. They were like, they had already made some, huge history-making albums, and Vivian stumbled across one of the biggest albums to make musical history, but he just didn't know it. And then comes Sacred Heart, and that's when it all started, when Ronnie says, this is how it starts. Him and Jimmy get together and they write music, and then they bring in Viv, then they bring in the rest of the band. So after him and Jimmy had some written, then they bring in Vivian, and Ronnie's like, what do you got? And Vivian's like, I've got nothing. Because his idea of we need more money was based on just that. And he had blinders on. He didn't see that how much a fire-breathing dragon with real fire and lasers and explosions and all that, how much that really costs, and that Ronnie didn't hike up the ticket prices for that. They got a raise, and Ronnie actually took a pay cut, but they don't see that. And everybody says, oh, we felt just like you did. Vinny and Jimmy and Claude say, oh, we felt the same way you did. Well, where was that united front? Why was it just left up to Vivian? If they all felt the same way, why didn't they all get together? They didn't. Vivian started it. There really could have been a nice outcome to that if he had just approached Ronnie differently. You don't approach Ronnie like that. You've got to, he has worked so far and done so much. He deserves respect. Even if he was wrong, there's times when when him and I would go at each other, and he was wrong, but I gave him the respect he deserved. And when I left the band, I never said one bad word against him. Not one. He might have taken some pot shots at me, but he was upset. But, he brought me back. Now, if Vivian had done that, he probably would have brought Vivian back. And they probably would have found mutual ground. But at that time, that's when, talk about promises are broken. Ronnie didn't even get a chance to start talking about, here's how we're going to do this now. Because, Viv comes in and starts slapping the hand that fed him in the first place, slapping him in the face with comments and stuff that he didn't deserve. So you piss Ronnie off like that, and it's like, okay, you're out of here, man. They all had great houses. They all had great cars. They had wonderful lives. All of them. I know because I've been in each and every one of their houses. And, but it was just much more to it than that. And someday we can get into that, too, in great detail, because I was there when it happened. I was there when the promises were made. I lived in Ronnie's house. Me and Ronnie were friends. I was there all the time, and we were all friends. And then when I joined the band, of course, they were a little, reluctant, to say, hey, Craig, welcome in. But at the same time, they had to admit that Ronnie was happier. It was Ronnie's band. Me being Ronnie's guitar player made Ronnie happier. He was a happier guy. And isn't that the whole point to having your own band?
Yeah. We're talking with the great rock guitarist Greg Goldy, who's on the telephone line with us. And Greg, you mentioned before the name Jake E. Lee. And I read something that he had a short stint with Dio. He did an interview and said that at the time Dio was looking for like a European style sound in his music. Did you find that to be true when you took over?
No, yes and no. What I do remember, I was there. I saw Jake play with Ronnie, and I saw the look on Ronnie's face because he could play. Jake was, come on. Jake is one of the best guitar players in the world, but he's not known for having the best heavy metal riffs in the world. But he did write some really great stuff on those Ozzy albums. Plus, because he had also Phil Sasson to help him. Phil Sasson is a great songwriter. So everybody those were great albums that Jake was on, and even Badlands was, badass. But it just wasn't what Ronnie was looking for, and he did want to have a British guitar player because Blackmore was, British. Tony Iommi was basically British. A lot of times I understand Americans, they second guess and they have to make everything just right, and they plot and they plan and they come with a blueprint. When the British guys just pick up the guitar and go, screw it, man, bang. They just go for it. And Ronnie liked that. And that's what Vivian did. He was ferocious in that way. But then when it came time to have a plan and a blueprint, there was zero to be found. So I was kind of a hybrid.
Now we didn't go over this the last show. When John Sykes left Whitesnake, you got a call to be the guitarist for Whitesnake. How did that go? That
was a trip. At the time, me and David Glenn Isley were working on a project together for Geffen with John Kolodner. And so when Sykes decided to have Blue Murder, I remember Carmine Appice invited me over to his house. And I'll never forget it. I was sitting next to Carmine, and he was playing me the demos of Blue Murder. And they were it scared the crap out of me because they were so good. I thought, oh, man, this is really going to take off. And when Sykes was singing, I just assumed it was a guide vocal because, let's face it, he's not the best lead vocalist on the planet. He's the best guitar player on the planet, the best songwriter on the planet, but not the best singer on the planet, nor is he the best frontman on the planet. I'm sorry, but that's just the truth. So Geffen wanted David Glenn Isley because at the time Isley was at the top of his game. And when you put his voice, like you go and listen to my Hidden in Plain Sight album, listen to the song over and over, that's David Glenn Isley on a heavy metal song. When Isley sings on heavy metal, it's absolutely amazing. And Kolodner knew that. He sings circles. Isley sings circles around Sykes. Go even the first Jafir records. Listen to some of the screams at the end of "Turn Me On." I mean, the guy had chops that nobody else had, but nobody knew about. And unfortunately, Sykes had been, told what to do by Coverdale for so long. It was his time to call the shots, and that's what he did. But unfortunately, he still should have had a lead singer and let Sykes be almost like the Glenn Hughes to Coverdale in the Burn and Storminger album type of stuff, and he didn't. And so Clodner was pissed. So now David Glenn Isley is out, But meantime, he leaves a message on my machine. I'll never forget it. Walking in and hearing I turn on the machine to find out where my messages, who called since I was gone. I hear, Goldy, it's Clodner. Don't sign any contracts. You're going to be the next guitar player for Whitesnake. I'll call you back.
Wow.
And that was it. Because he was just like that. Bap, 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 bap. Don't do this and don't do that because I'm going to do this for you and you're going to love it. Because he was really, he's the reason why Aerosmith got back together again and got so big. The guy knew what he was doing. And that didn't go through, And in a way, I'm very glad because then he put me and David Glenn Isley together back in the studio, and that's where some of those other really great gems came from. And then that's what was part of some of the stuff that I did that got David Lee Roth interested, and Pink Floyd, the producer of Pink Floyd, interested, and Joe Lynn Turner and all that kind of stuff. So some of the failures actually brought in some great achievements, But that was the deal, Quite honestly, I don't think now that I've dropped the weight and everything, I'd be a great fit for Whitesnake. But, because I love Coverdale's voice. But, I'm not one of those jack-of-all-trade guys. That's what he needs. Because just like David Lee Roth, you get a guy in there who can play anything and look great and do anything he asks right off the top of his head, like Glenn Hughes does with the Dead Daisies with Aldrich. Those guys are amazing. Those guys can do anything. I'm not that guy. I'm just kind of like a stylized guy. I have limitations. My imagination has no boundaries, but the things that I like and I put my heart into have limitations because I won't go there because I'm just not a jack of all trades kind of guy. Never wanted to be that. Otherwise, I would have been David Lee Roth's guitar player, and I probably would have been Whitesnake's guitar player. But I wasn't a good fit, and they just figured that out. And I'm good with that. Just to be considered was great.
Stevie
That's
Vai,
when you say, hey, just being nominated is great,
Oh yeah, but wasn't Stevie Vai in the mix of the Whitesnake guitar transition?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Wasn't Stevie Vai in the mix there during that guitar transition with Whitesnake?
Yes, that's what I thought. People think that I've got the timeline mixed up, but I could have sworn that was why I didn't get the gig, is that Steve Vai walked in. I mean, give me a break. If I'm standing on one side and Steve Vai's standing on the other, and you can only pick one for Whitesnake, who are you going to pick? You're going to pick the biggest box office straw, and that was Steve Vai.
Wow. And I have a couple of minutes, Goldy. I want to get this in. You've collaborated famously with so many artists. How was it working with Uli John Roth?
Man, he's a wizard. It took a little while for me to figure him out because at first I found him to be a little aloof, and people say that about me too. It's odd because I don't see myself that way, but he's on a different planet, and I guess I came from a different planet too. At one point, it was really funny. Ginger Baker's boy, Kofi Baker, was playing drums for Uli, and he was late. I mean, Uli had just flown in from Germany. He was just dead tired and jet lagged with an inch of his life, and Kofi's late. So Kofi comes in all huffing and puffing and, and saying this and that, and holds up a video about how he got hit by a car. And everybody could see that all he had to do was stop and turn, 3 inches to the left, and he would have been avoided, and he's crying and this and that. And Uli goes, doesn't sound like a very good singing voice. That's all he had to say. Because what he was trying to say is, all your bitching and moaning is not doing you any good, buddy. You're late for a stupid reason. You're complaining about it like a little spoiled girl, and you don't even have a good sound to your voice. So he puts it as not a very good singing voice. And so just was funny, and he was such a weird guy, but at the same time, there was something about him. So he comes back to one of our dressing rooms, and Vinny's playing the solo that I did in the 1986 Sacred Heart. Uli says, "Who's that?" And Vinny says, "That's Craig." And from that point on, Uli started calling me Maestro. And all of a sudden, the connection between him and I, and the correspondence between him and I, went to a totally different place, because he was like, "Oh, you're from my planet." Ah, right. Let me show you some things, because I've been doing this, longer than you, and that kind of thing. He was almost like he took me under his wing, almost like, and protected me kind of in a way. It was hard to explain, but he's like this wizard from another planet, and now he realized that maybe, I have somebody from my planet here. I'm nowhere near Uli. No way would I say that I could play like him, because that guy is on another planet, but it was certainly nice to be welcomed by him that way. And from that day, our conversations and correspondences were completely different and at a higher level of respect than I thought I would ever even see from him, because I didn't think that he would see anybody else besides himself. And he couldn't see anybody else besides himself, because there wasn't anybody else besides himself on the planet yet.
And I have like a few seconds left, but you're right, Goldie. I love to see you play with Whitesnake.
I would love it. Coverdale is another one of my favorite singers of all time. Yeah.
I mean, and also we didn't even touch. What about Angelo Batio? Eight Pillars of Steel. That was great work.
Oh, thanks, man. That was fun. That was a lot of fun when they sent me that, and asked me to do a piece, because I thought, what the heck am I going to do? Because everybody on that album, is like guitar. It's like they're acrobatics. There's just all guitar acrobatics on the high wire, and then I come walking in and I'm like, I'm afraid of heights. What do I do? So I became a hybrid of just old, new, and I got a little bit of wild, and I got a little bit of sensible, got a little bit of, something that people can hum, and a little bit of like, what the hell is that? And where did that come from? And kind of mix it all together, instead of just like walking in there and just, playing 1,000 miles a minute and saying, okay, I'm done with that, on to the next. And so I'm glad that they liked what I did.
Fabulous. Well, listen, I really appreciate it again. There's only one Goldie, Craig Goldie. Thanks so much, Craig.
Thank you, brother. Man, we got to do this more often. You're awesome, man. I love this, because there's so many stories that would blow your mind, but that's up to you guys. But I love you guys. Thank you so much for having me back, and have a great day, and I hope to hear from you again soon.
Likewise, the legendary rock guitarist Craig Goldie. Until next week, happy collecting.
Okay, buddy.